Composer Gloves here, and this is the first video in the DSP basics. DSP stands for digital signal processing, and I'm just going to cover, basic things in here because there are things that, and hopefully actually it'll add up to more advanced things. Maybe one day this will be the advanced DSP section where we could talk about math and things, and hopefully you won't get completely lost when we start diving into equations. But today we're just going to talk about sample rate. Because it's an important concept in digital audio. Sample rate sort of rules. And you've probably heard about these things like high resolution music and things like that. And you might be going, where's this high resolution music? What's this extra charge on iTunes for high resolution or whatever? Well, what that is you're paying for an uncompressed waveform recorded at a higher sample rate. Usually there's other things that come into play here, but we're just gonna be talking about sample rate right now. So I have here, let's open up an Edison and sort of show you what's going down. If I could find the Edison. Oh my gosh, down here. Okay, so Edison's great because it can show you these samples. So if we go and grab a sound, and let's just grab this sound. And so the thing about digital audio is it's recorded and it has to go through something called a sample and hold unit. So if you were using an analog circuit to record, you'd get a continuous signal being recorded onto something. So like tape would record magnetic pulses, for example, off of the analog fluctuation of voltage. But with digital, you send it that analog signal and it takes a whole bunch of pictures essentially really, really fast. This is called your sample rate. And at your sample rate, the more samples you get, the better your sound will be. And so for CD quality, 44,100 times per second is the sample rate. And it sounds pretty good. When you put together 44,100 samples a second, you get a pretty faithful reproduction of what you heard. Now there's this other thing called bit depth, and we're just not going to talk about that right now. So the amount of slices that happen in a second is referred to as your sample rate. And if we zoom in here, we could see our samples you could see them being stripped together, and then it sort of interpolates the distance between the two. And so it draws our line, and that is our waveform. And so you can imagine you get a higher sample rate. It'll take up much more space on your hard drive, but it'll also sound so much better. Now it's sort of like the 4K thing. Once your resolution is so great, it really becomes sort of negligible. So let's really quick open up our audio settings. And you see here I have my sample rate right here. It's at 44,100 times a second, CD quality. And I could record up to 192,000 times per second. And of course that would be huge. Most of the time when you go into studio, you record at 96. Just because you want really high quality. I don't know very many people who use either of these. But 96, I've used that for some artists, and I have to explain to them, when you compress this down to an MP3, or you compress it down to some other form, it will lose quality because some of those samples will be taken out. And so that's why when you're paying for a WAV file or maybe a FLAC file of some kind that is uncompressed. And as a result, your file size is much bigger. This is why WAV files are so much bigger. But you also get that full picture, and it really does. Moving from standard quality or MP3 compresses it to a bit rate, but moving from that compressed quality to the uncompressed version, if recorded at a higher rate. See, if it's not recorded at a higher rate, there's no point in rendering it out at a higher rate, but it really does make quite a huge difference. And so now when you see sample rate, that's what it's talking about. And there's another reason this is so important is because every digital effect pretty much ever uses this to its advantage. So it's going through this sample and hold circuit. So voltage comes in and it says, oh, sample, 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 sample really fast. But you can also do a whole bunch of other things. You could send algorithms using that data to change it. This is how parametric EQs work, digital EQs anyways. This is pretty much any digital processing effect will take advantage of this process so that it can change the way things are done. Now, this isn't 100% true for some things where it uses straight up math to generate the signal. But it's still sort of true because it's still got to have some sort of a rate because it's discrete information. Discrete meaning you can, pick a value and there's that value. It's right there. You can graph it versus not discrete, which would be like analog, where it's just continuous signal. There's no point where you could chop it up and say this is that signal anymore. But digital will have to do that. So that's sample rate in a nutshell. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Hopefully you've got some revelation on like, oh, this is really cool. Like granular synthesis uses this big time. Harmer, if you are a Harmer user, it will take this, analyze it, and recreate it in partials using bits and pieces of this information. It really is fundamental to pretty much anything. And next time you have a musician come over and you're recording them, or you're recording your own voice or whatever, then now like, oh, maybe I should use a higher sample rate. But just so you know, you will run into weird things. If you change the sample rate, you got to restart everything. That way it's all on the same page with the sample rate. And you got to make sure your settings are all okay. And you also got to have the space available for recording that large of a file and the capacity to be able to send that much information at the same time. So you may need to upgrade your stuff to a higher USB audio interface to handle that kind of a thing. Or maybe you won't. I don't know. But anyways, that's what sample rate is. If you enjoy these videos, subscribe and have a blessed day.